Okay, so what's new in Gerrit 3.0 and 3.1? I will tell you why we are talking about 3.0 and 3.1, because since the last summit that was in Palo Alto last year, we released 3.0 and 3.1. So we wanted to show to you what's different from the previous version that you saw. And there is another reason, because 3.0 and 3.1, they are closely related, yeah? So, okay, who we are, I believe I mentioned that already before, but anyway. So that's our company, that's what we do, and we do actually a lot of Jenkins integration. So if you use Jenkins and you're interested in integrating with Gerrit, you can talk to us. So first of all, numbers. So I like a lot of numbers because I believe numbers are the only ones that don't lie. And they are only ones that are absolutely objective, right? And those are the numbers of Gerrit 3.0 in terms of development. So we did almost 1,500 commits. And we work on 8 different repos. And that's important. So Gerrit is not a single repository, because since 2012, we started breaking down in different parts. And some of the parts are called core plugins, others are called lib modules, others are called non-core plugins, but they're all part of Gerrit. Whenever you run Gerrit, typically you run Gerrit plus some plugins. And for instance, most of you, they will use the replication plugins as well. So we consider it as part of Gerrit. So we have basically 65 people that contributed to the Gerrit code review project and to this release. And as you can see from the number of authors, you see there is a lot more people than just Google, because you guys don't have 65 people working on that. There were 22 companies involved. And here involved, it means they've done at least one commit for the specific version. Again, as you see, Google did 46%, but Collaborate did 25% of this release, and Gerrit Forge 10%, and many other companies. Here, this picture is not fair, because in these small green power slides that you see here, there are many more people that may be contributed by notifying bugs, fixing documentation, and so on. The 3.1 in numbers is smaller than 3.0. So we got 1,443 commits, and just 3 repositories that were changed. And even the number of people and organization is less. And as you can see, there is a lot more involvement by Google. And there will be Patrick in this talk and subsequent talks that will tell the wonderful things that Google has done. And after they're great, we'll say they were really great. So I will talk high level to the features, because I don't want to go into the details. And even because you will see that the majority of the features are not functional features, but really some kind of cleanup and evolution that we did. So first of all, PolyGerrit. So PolyGerrit is not a new feature. PolyGerrit was introduced a long ago, starting from version 2.14. However, from version 3.0 is the very first version of Gerrit where the old UI, the good UI, is gone, and it's gone forever. So that means that the majority of the work that we did in 3.0 was not for developing PolyGerrit, because PolyGerrit was there. It was almost ready. There were just some kind of bits and pieces that needed to be adjusted. But the majority of the work was removing all our legacy. We removed the colossal numbers of lines of code. And I believe who was merging the one that was removing good UI? Was you, David? Yeah. So he did the clicking the button that was removing all the good UI from Gerrit. They Borowitz approved the changes, yes, of course. So, and that's a very important, this word, forever. Because people sometimes say, oh, but my people would like to have a good UI on 3.0. How can I have good UI on 3.0? You can't. So great UI is gone forever. The code base is not there, and I will tell you why it's not there, because Google doesn't develop the GUID framework anymore. So do we want to leave and to kind of lead in a completely dead horse or the dead end? No. And to be honest with you, we have seen a huge increase in satisfaction and traffic in people adopting Gerrit after we switched to PolyGerrit. So it means that even if for the people that were used to the GUID UI, maybe they find at the beginning kind of challenging to use PolyGerrit, but actually the majority of the people and the people that never used Gerrit before look at PolyGerrit and say, this is great. They told me that was difficult to use, but that is not difficult after all. Another thing that is really great is the inline edit. That is not a new feature. This is a feature that was developed by a guy that I know that is on my left, many years ago on GUID, was developed by David Ostrowski, and then is a feature that got even better when we went to PolyGerrit. So it does exactly what the old feature does, I believe with one small exception, but I can't remember which one it was. And the workflow and the ease of use is much higher. And you will see even visually is absolutely clear that you're in edit mode, and the rendering as well, all the syntax and lighting is absolutely working great. How many of you guys use the inline edits on a daily basis? Sometimes, once in a while. Okay, sounds good. For the guys that are not using it, why you don't use it? Put it on your Mentimeter, right? That's the point. And let me know at the end of the talk what you think. Another thing that is really great is the dark mode. So I saw on Twitter was a few days ago that GitHub finally introduced dark mode. And to me, it looks like that GitHub is becoming more and more like Gerrit. So if you use Gerrit today, it means you're at least 2 or 3 years more advanced than GitHub. And another thing that I use all the time is the mobile view. Again, this is not new in 3.0, but this is one exceptional feature of PolyGerrit. And for me, then I'm living in London, so I commute very often, and I'm sitting on the London Underground, not like this, but like this, yeah, because it's very busy. Yeah? I like the mobile view because if I open my laptop, I occupy 3 spaces of the Underground. But with my mobile phone, I can do some quick review and, for instance, providing some feedback. That is absolutely great. I didn't mention here because it's not PolyGerrit, but one member of the Google project team that is called Edwin did as well a client on Android. So if you use Android, you can do your review on Android as well on the go. Another one that is very important is the incredible possibilities opened by the PolyGerrit plugins. And there will be Han talking about the new checks integration, so the checks plugin. And what I absolutely find fantastic is that the checks plugin is integrated seamlessly into PolyGerrit. You will never realize that was a plugin. It really looks like it's a part of the initial design, a part of the initial development. That means that the PolyGerrit team did a fantastic job in making the GUI not just super nice, but even super extensible. And that's a great feature that you guys maybe want to use as well, because maybe you have checks, maybe integration with Jenkins, but maybe you have maybe something else that you want to display there. Maybe information is specific to your company. And thanks to the extensibility of PolyGerrit, you can do that. And there will be Tao as well, presenting stuff in the lightning talks, how you can do PolyGerrit plugins as well, and the tools associated to that. Another one that the PolyGerrit team did, and it's really great, is the out-of-the-box experience. I believe that you guys are going to talk more about PolyGerrit, so we'll go just quickly on these ones. And that's the most important slide. So you guys see 3.0, you will see the features of 3.1 as well, but how many of you are running 3.0 in production? Raise your hand. 3.0. 2. 3.1. That's me. So a very important thing that is super important, I put it in green, to go to 3.0 and beyond, you have to stop first on 2.16. That's a very important milestone. The reason is because, as you can see before, we were using the metadata of Gerrit into a relational database that is called ReviewDB. And because we removed all the code related to ReviewDB, you cannot upgrade from, for instance, 2.14 ReviewDB to 3.0 straight away, or for 2.11 to 3.1 straight away. I know that lots of companies like these big bang migrations, and I'm going to talk about migration in a different talk. However, this is just not possible because the 3.1 and 3.0 code base just don't have the code anymore for doing this type of migrations, okay? So that's super important. So you have first to migrate to 2.16 and then to migrate even further. Another thing that is very important, I mentioned, I believe, to James and Monty in Gothenburg, 2.16 is a great release as well because it's the last release that contains the GUID UI and contains the same PolyGerrit that you see in 3.0. So if you want your people to get used to the new UI, but without a big bang approach, so they don't want, let's say, to show up on Monday and they say, oh my gosh, where is the GUID UI? It's gone. I don't know how to use the new one. and they start escalating to their managers. You guys are going to have problems, and nobody's happy. You don't want your users to complain. You want your users to be happy, right? So giving them to 16 is the best thing you can do to make them happy, because they can still work on the good UI, and they can have a look on PolyGerrit how it works. They can say, guys, have a close look on PolyGerrit, because the next upgrade, the old one is gone. And then after a month, you say, guys, did you look PolyGerrit? Oh, not really, I like the old one. It's gone. And then after 2 months, when they will say, oh, I didn't have a look, I say, listen, the clock is ticking. Next month, I'm not going to ask you. The old one is gone. Okay? And I'm sorry, the old one is not going to come back. Because if you ask Google, are you guys going to resume support on Good UI? What do you say? No. Another thing that we'll mention in the upgrade talk is try to make little steps. So I put all the steps because every single release provides value, provides bug fixing, provides improvements, and so on. And the more you go down on, the more you go up on the ladder of upgrades, the more stable Gerrit becomes, and the much faster it becomes as well. And there will be punch showing some real end-to-end use cases and test cases that we implemented, and we open source to allow you guys to verify that in person. So there are new plugins as well on 3.0 and 3.1. So one is the plugin manager. That how many of you remember when I presented the plugin manager? Yeah, it was years ago. It was 5 years ago, something like that. But it took some time. But now the plugin manager is a core plugin, so you can discover and install plugins without having to look them over the internet, find in random places, building up yourself. You can just find them and install it from Gerrit. If we got more core plugins, Gittos, finally. Even Gittos was developed years ago, but finally is a part of Gerrit core. The delete project was kind of ridiculous, but we didn't have the button to delete the project. It's like that. And webhooks that was developed by SAP, by Sasha, in a hackathon. Again, they are part of the core Gerrit. There are even new non-core plugins. I mentioned them because they are not part of the core plugins, but to me, they are pretty much core. So for instance, integration with checks, to me, is a core feature that at the moment is a non-core plugin. In the future, who knows? Maybe it will be core plugin, maybe it will be not. Multi-site, how many of you guys have been waiting for multi-site? Raise your hand. If you use native packages, you've got support for newer version of CentOS and Red Hat and Ubuntu, and this is very important. So Docker was always considered until 3.0 a kind of a demo setup, but from 3.0 onwards, we can actually use it for production. So we made some adjustment in a way that is secure to be used in production as well.
The front-end engineers invested a lot of good engineering time into that, and at first, a framework migration sounds not so exciting, but for the user, it's really exciting because it landed a 5 to 10% speed improvement across the board for pretty much all the views, and this is where you really get to benefit from that migration. The Git protocol v2 was added by David Ostrowski. He will talk about this in a second. And then there was really a lot of performance work going on, and performance is, when you look at a 10-year-old product, it's finding a million small things and getting lucky a million small times so that you actually find it and you can fix it. And our focus there was that we find the cases that are, P99, so it's really this edge case where the user runs into every 100th times or whatever, but then it's really bad, right? Then you wait for the site to load for 10, 15 seconds. And there were a bunch of components in Gerrit that had this concept of stop the world, let me do this work, and then unpause the world again. And I'll go into more detail in my talk about that tomorrow. Besides that, there was a lot of front-end improvements for stability, a lot of things related to the framework, but then also things like, if you look at the dashboard, there were no limits on changes, and we do have users that have starred or been CC'd on 500 changes. So every time you load the dashboard, it loads 500 changes. That is slow, and that kind of work was also done. And yeah, besides that, a lot of work went into Git push and stability fixes, general reliability things. And there is a CI integration talk that Hanwen will give, I believe, in half an hour. that will talk about the new CI integration for Gerrit that we are really excited for and that we hope you can be excited for too.
The major improvement is with fetch command. It through the refs filtering, you don't need to, in advertisement phase, to send all refs to the client that probably not needed at all, because I want only a specific branch, or even this is a no-op fetch. And on big repository, we have seen improvements of factor 3 in performance using Git protocol v2. And we tried to activate it in Palo Alto hackathon last year. It kind of worked, but some security vulnerability suddenly showed up. No wonder, because it invasive change how the advertisement and ref filtering works. And we reverted it once and fixed actually the security vulnerability, but and even committed it again in 3.0. Just don't wonder if you see in some announcement that Gerrit 3.0 support protocol v2. It first was there, but then Hanwen and Patrick said, come on, you still don't have tests. You still don't have tests. And you're not really sure that it works. So the problem why it was a challenge to add a test, because as you know, Gerrit is using JGit. And JGit on the client side still doesn't support Git protocol v2. I was talking to Jonathan, a member from a Terry team, and say maybe someone can, and he say, well, he likes pull request and commits, and so we all should at some point add JGit support on the client side, because other projects like Jenkins, like eGit, integration with Git on the clip side intensively use JGit. But the challenge was here to actually add a test and rewrite the underground layer, how the refs filtering is working in Gerrit. And thanks to Patrick, he added permission-aware ref database that permission-aware and not only send the refs if a user had access. Then Stefano helped polish out this change, and then we figured out that it has to be done also some changes in JGit. Thanks Matthias for review, it was approved, and thanks to Hanwen for all the reviews on the Gerrit side. Right, so so the challenge, how we tested it in the end was that this is a new kind of test. This is first time that we did a real integration test of Gerrit from JUnit test, but with a Git core program. This we start a Gerrit instance, and we configure HTTP and SSH on the server side, and we use plugin API to add a public key and set the passwords. And now the Gerrit full setup, we spawn a Git client, Git core command, and we request the refs, the protected refs that the server must not send. And that way, and we also check that actually Git v2 protocol is used. So if you use it on your machine and you have outdated Git client, you need to 18, and if you have to 17 or older, then this test is skipped. So we know for sure that if something get broken, we will find out and stop, and Gerrit wouldn't build and wouldn't test. Yeah, and it was important to me that you don't need to do anything with Gerrit. It just enabled per default, and we achieved the goal. If you install 3.1, look, I'll talk tomorrow about upgrades. But if you have got 3.1 and you start Gerrit, it could immediately work, but it's important to know that you have to enable protocol v2 on both server side and client side. Just one setting, protocol version equal 2, and that's it. And then you can see the demo. Of course, if you use Android or Chromium, you use Google infrastructure, and it is already since May 2018 activated. So it's, of course, it would work. But now here you see in this demo line, this is GerritHub.io that run by Gerrit Forge, and it is already on 3.1 since
45 minutes after the release. So sometimes there are some features that are deprecated for a release, and then sooner or later we need to remove them. So the push into refs drafts was removed. If you remember when the drafts have been dismantled, do you remember? 2.15. In 2.15, the draft, they were not supported anymore, but we were still serving the push to refs drafts. Just because people say, oh my gosh, I got so many automation scripts, so you're going to remove that specific push. Yeah, the repo as well, was using it. So now nobody should be using it anymore in 3.1. So if you push in 3.1 to refs drafts, then the push is getting rejected. Another thing as well, so previously we were actually accepting pushes directly to ref changes. And now they are not accepted anymore because you may actually, let's say, tamper with the metadata that is in the Git repository as well. So when you upgrade to 3.1, those are two things you need to take into account. Another thing that is very important, and this is super, super important to check, when you migrate to 3.1, make sure that you don't use anymore the .git config that you got in your home directory. Previously, that was the only way to configure JGit settings. For instance, for the people that are on HA, trust folder stats. It was there. So if you upgrade to 3.1 and you forget to move that file into JGit config, you get very bad surprises. Yeah. So remember to do this upgrade. And of course, it's all noted into the release notes, but I just pulled the ones that are most worth remarking. I wanted to show a little bit of the future. So because we define engineering steering committee, we had meetings as well where we think about where we believe Gerrit should go. And those are not commitments. Those are just roadmap. It means this is where we think Gerrit will go. But of course, you can change the roadmap as well by saying, guys, I've got a different idea. Or guys, if you do that, that's my feedback. It's not going to work. Yeah. But this is what we've got currently in the 3.1 and beyond roadmap. So first of all, the pluggable authentication backend. That is a work that we started back in 2012. So it was CollabNet and Gerrit Forge that came together in a hackathon and proposed to kind of revamp the authentication system in Gerrit. And since 2012, has never been merged. So we are committed to get it done. The removal of groups. So we did the delete project. Maybe we can do the delete group. Why not? Migration to Polymer 3, but I will leave this one to the Polymer team. And just yesterday was an interesting discussion about the attention set. And I'm hopeful that we get it done very soon because maybe you guys want to talk about something. And the improvement of robot comments. So this is something that actually Gerrit was innovating compared to GitHub, but then we kind of were stuck on that. I believe there was a fantastic talk made by Patrick years ago, but just the apply fix button was missing. So we'll work on improving that one. Again, more in the roadmap of 3.2 is continue with improvements of performance, because what Sean was used to say, performance is a feature. If the product is low, the product is not working. People expect the product to work in a timely manner. So performance is a feature. That's why we stress so much on that. We'll invest more time on large mono repos because I know you guys love large repos. Yeah? In Gerrit at the moment is not so fast with large repos. Then we'll revamp the caching system, and there will be, I believe, Hanwen talking about an experimental work on ref table. There was an initial design by Sean. But the point is, it's really good that we continue, and we basically make it happen. And more improvements on the push and the latency. Another thing that is critical is really the upgrade of Java. So we are still based on Java 8. Java 8 is pretty much obsolete. Yeah. And there will be a talk specifically on that one, and the migration to Java 11. Yeah. And when we'll move to Java 11, actually Java will be ready to manage even machines with terabytes of memory. You know that some of you has a machine with 1 terabyte of memory, right? You guys, SAP? There we go. And nowadays, I saw, for instance, a couple of days ago, the new MacBook has 64 gig. So 1 terabyte is not going to be that big after all, right? Okay, there will be some improvements as well to the plugins. And I'm talking about plugins because, again, plugins are part of the things that we put on Gerrit to make it work. So there is Martin that proposed a fantastic improvement on the replication plugin, and the design has been approved. So I believe those guys together with us, I'm more than happy to help Martin on that, improve the performance of the replication. At the moment, the replication is limited to a single node. But when you start going multi-master, you say, man, I got 5 masters. Why the other 4, they don't have this poor guy that is dying replicating all this stuff? So that is going to be a fantastic improvement. And I would like as well to put the make pluggable the replication queue. That is one of the critical aspects of the replication. How many of you have got replication problems with the replication plugin? Sometimes? Yes. So that is going to be a fantastic improvement on that. There will be more improvements on the checks plugin, and that's my personal view. I will be more than happy for that to become core in the future, but that's my personal view. It's not a community, yeah? So, and there will be a lot of improvements on the HA plugin because we started killing the fork that was originally done by Gerrit Forge and merging all the improvements to the main plugin. So I'm hopeful that by joining forces, we'll go faster and we'll improve the HA plugin, allowing concurrent writes on all the different nodes at the same time by integrating basically the global RefDB on Zookeeper.